Because Donald Trump sat down with Bev Turner last night and he said that Europe needs MAGA.
But the expression really says it all, make America great again. You should have the same expression in your country, make the UK great again. You know, you have so many terms. You have England, you have Britain, you have the UK, you have, but whatever you want to use. Yeah. You want to make it great again.
But we're not alone in Europe, that leaders of European countries, and particularly the UK, are incredibly squeamish about the suggestion that their people are more important than people coming from other countries. Why?
Well, you don't have that in all cases. Look, in the case of Hungary, you have a man named Viktor Orban, who the other leaders hate, but who does a fabulous job. You know how many people he's allowed into his country?
Go on.
0. And he's got no problems. He has taken some Ukrainians, you know, from the war, but basically 0.
Right, Duncan and Dominic, he's got a point, hasn't he? I'm going to start with you, actually, because talking about Hungary there is an interesting comparison. It is a relatively safe country in Europe, has taken on a lot of the sort of Trumpian immigration policies more broadly. Do you think we're going to see more sort of Trump-style politics in Europe? We're going to have Sir Keir Starmer copying his plans?
Well, I think with Viktor Orban, we have already seen Trump-style policies in Europe, but I'm not entirely sure the UK and Britain are keen to emulate Viktor Orban.
35,000 crossing on a small boat.
Well, Viktor Orban is a man who has been kind of thrown out of European institutions for his the way he runs his country, for the anti-democratic processes, for the way that they kind of bullied the judiciary into political decisions. That's not a good thing. That is something we should avoid.
The judiciary bullies us and says we can't deport.
The judiciary follows the law. I think you can change the law. That's what politicians are there to do. If you want to change the law, change it. Don't bully judges into... publish...
There is an appetite in the UK. Week after week, surveys show that immigration is now the most popular, the most important issue facing British voters. So there is a bit of an appetite, isn't there, for Keir Starmer to copy what Viktor Orban or Donald Trump is doing? Well,
there's absolutely an appetite for, as you say, kind of stopping the boats, for controlling immigration. But that's why this government has done that. That's why there's 50% more decision-making. There's 50% more decision-making. 11% more people are being deported, like monthly or whatever it is, than they were before the election. And that's why there's the New France deal. Look, Britain is clearly great. It doesn't need to be made great again because people want to come here.
Hello, I'm Bev Turner. Now, it can feel like the money in our bank accounts at the moment does not keep up with the cost of living. And maybe there's a solution. I'm here today with the CEO of TallyMoney, Cameron Parry. Cameron, what is TallyMoney?
Well, Bev, with TallyMoney, you get a current account and a debit card, but instead of pounds, you use milligrams of gold as your everyday money.
So why gold?
Gold traditionally is a great store of value. It has, on average, gone up at over 11% per annum for the last 25 years against the pound. It's tripled in value in the last decade. And in the last 2 years alone, it's increased by 50% against the pound. Banks' savings products just can't compete with that level of growth.
But this isn't just about gold. This is about a currency that you guys have created at TallyMoney. Explain it to me as though I'm an idiot.
So, look, people need to be able to hold their earnings and build their savings in a money that retains its value and remains in their legal control and remains theirs to access, away from government control.
Great. You had me at not exposed to government control.
You should feel safe and happy with your money. You should have peace of mind. The more money you see in your bank balance, and that's the type of thing we're trying to deliver, and give people choice in the type of money they get to use every day.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Cameron. Thank you.
Is this a case where we're going through sort of a Trumpian revolution, especially in North America, but also increasingly in Europe? And in Britain, we sort of have the wrong politicians for that time.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Listen, the biggest mistake that's been made in the last 2 years was the deterrent that was put in place but never got an opportunity to run by the Conservatives, which was the Rwanda deterrent, the policy, which is basically if you come to this country illegally, you get processed in somewhere like Rwanda. That is a pretty unpalatable outcome. And I believe if that had actually come into effect, the the numbers that we're still hearing about today on GB News in terms of boat crossings would have dropped. We seem to have this problem in Britain where, and it's not just under this government, we saw it under the Conservatives as well, this almost like this nervousness of trying to put this country first and saying, look, we have a right to control our borders, and if that means doing something that's, for some people, might consider a bit unpalatable, so be it. It's interesting watching the Trump interview there with Bev. I mean, what wasn't mentioned is Meloni in Italy, who's doing remarkable work, in stopping immigration. And I do think it is an issue for voters. As you mentioned, Olivia, you have it as one of the top issues in the polls that come out. And consequently, people want to see action. And what we have at the moment is a government who are threatened by Reform UK because they're doing really well in the polls, trying to be tough on the boat crossings. And every week we seem to have a different policy being outlined. At the moment, it's like, let's copy Denmark. A couple of weeks ago, it was like this one in, one out thing that appears not to be working. So they're desperate to find a solution, but they're nervous. And Keir Starmer's right to be nervous about it because some of his backbench Labour MPs don't want him to be too tough.
Well, absolutely. And I think it's quite interesting. You talk about Rwanda there. Part of Denmark's strategy is actually deporting migrants to Rwanda, of all places. So Shabana Mahmood saying she's going to copy Denmark. Might she end up actually introducing that Rwanda policy?
I can't imagine a situation in which the Labour government will introduce a return to the failed Rwanda scheme. £700 million to deport 4 people.
Why was it failed? Why it didn't?
Because it deported 4 people for £700 million.
4 volunteers, we should say, as well.
4 volunteers.
But Dominic, do you think that a deportation scheme, if it's not Rwanda, that an alternative plan could be
People
put
come
across?
to the UK statistically because they think the UK follows the rule of law, that they think this is a place that treats...
think it's light touch,
No,
let's be frank.
that's not what the surveys find. That's not what the
illegally.
surveys find. When they study the people that come here, they find that it's because they trust the rule of law here. These are people who are leaving
Trust
from
the rule
countries...
of law to approve their asylum claims, whereas in Denmark, for example, one of the, I think, pretty interesting proposals that Shabana Mahmood is making, they are far more strenuous. You don't have family reunity programmes in the same way that we do have here, but we're going to see dozens.
Well, they're talking about changing those. I think you make an incredibly important point, which is that it is one of the top issues for voters, but it's a top issue for Reform and Conservative voters. Actually, it's not one of the most important issues for Labour voters, which is obviously
Labour
where the government
might
gets
be turning
its
into Reform voters.
It's, well, there's certainly a problem with that at the moment for the government. And there is massive disquiet in the government benches with proposals that will be seen as anti-progressive, will not be seen as pro-people coming to this country.
Absolutely.
Can I ask a question? Why is it anti-progressive to want to protect your borders?
It's not about that. I think it's not reasonable to kind of it's not legal to bring people for people to come to this country and to then treat them in the way that deporting them to Rwanda, a non-safe country, it's not reasonable to sit them in a kind of a limbo stasis to prevent family reunion. Okay. Absolutely, I think it would be fair to say to people who come here as asylum seekers to claim asylum, refugee status, that if it is safe to return, you absolutely should return. Dominic, that is the point.
On Thursday in Oxford, I saw an Iranian asylum seeker who crossed the country on a small boat being sentenced for raping a 15-year-old girl. Now, her mother, that teenager, has written letters to the Home Office demanding answers. Why was this man, who had 11 convictions in Germany for violence, allowed to come to Britain, be convicted again in this country of theft, not be jailed? He was given a community order to then go on and attack her daughter. That man should never have been in this country. Is it reasonable to say that our current process is it acceptable? Surely something has to change, quite seriously. And if the progressive wing of the Labour Party don't want to get on board with it, clearly they are allowing these scenarios to take place. They are allowing a system that sees these small boat crossings come into Britain and carry out these heinous acts.
Clearly that is a horrific crime, and one in which that you want that person to not be allowed into the UK at any point, and that person needs to be detained. And I think part of the problem here is that if you deport that person, they probably won't continue to be detained. They won't be in prison.
They won't be abroad. In Britain.
No, but...
They won't be in Britain.
But is it important to punish that person and to ensure they are incarcerated for the crime they've committed? I think it is, so it's important they're incarcerated in the UK.
Well, thank you, Duncan and Dominic. Much more of that in the next hour. But
yeah.
Andy, I've never heard Trump, talk so naturally for that length of time. There was no auto cue, there was no script. It was just a very relaxed and fair play to Bev. That's one of the hardest parts of interviewing somebody like Donald Trump, is to get them that relaxed. What did you make of what you heard in the second half?
Again, really interesting. It was brilliant the way he was relaxed. We got an insight into him.
Yes.
He didn't clam up. He wasn't angry. So that was really interesting. Whether you love Trump or you hate him, he says stuff that he believes, and he says stuff that resonates with big numbers of people. And when he talked about immigration there, Dawn, that was strong stuff.
Yes.
But you know what? He is right, is that mass immigration on a rapid scale has changed the face of Britain. It's changed the face of Europe. It's destabilised the people who were here already. It's changed communities and it's put all kinds of pressure. And it's created a sense of decline and being out of control. And I think he's right to bring this up. And it's fascinating to me because 10 years ago, no one would dare say it.
Absolutely.
It's now OK. And that's one of the great things, because we do need to talk about this, don't we?
Very much so. And if we don't talk about it, then it goes underground and you get more hatred and division on both sides. I think we do need to talk about it. And I thought one of the interesting points he made was sort of like, when he said that Europe has been ruined by mass migration. And, we've used the military in America. And Bev goes, well, is that something we should do here in the UK? And he goes, yeah, use the military. You've got a natural defence.
Absolutely. I mean, I would love to see, obviously we have to be careful who we let into the military, but we have recruitment problems.
Yes.
So why don't we in the military, why don't we encourage people who've moved here, second-generation immigrants, to actually get involved and make a real push? And of course, that's when you see if people are really bought in. If they're saying, I can't represent your country, they don't really belong. So I really believe in using the military, but we need people to feel invested and belong here. And it's going to take a lot of work. But I think that what we've got to do is slow immigration down hugely and work on what we have before we start letting more people in.
Yeah.